In this poem, Asghar recounts a lullaby told to her by her sister when a young child. By the age of 5, both her parents had died, leaving her struggling to cope with her grief. In this poem, the sister tells a story of their parents being reunited across continents via a magical tunnel, before the focus shifts to tangible, touching memories of their parents' living intimacy. When the sadness comes, my sister tells me a story. A man buried in Pakistan, a woman buried in New York City. When we sleep, they wake opposite sides of the world. The planet opens a tunnel where they meet. Dirt sky and worm stars. The lovers dance all night. Their way back, my father's fingertips pressing against my mother's crooked smile. Her henna-dyed hair light the underworld. The mole on his lips' left side winks the dark. Note that every single stanza in the poem consists of 2 lines. This is both a visual reminder of the dual loss, both the persona's mother and father have died, but also of their unity. They cannot be separated in the children's imagination, even in death. Khadija is the poet's older sister, who would try to comfort her with fantastical images of their dead parents meeting once again within a lullaby. Lullabies are usually told or sung by parents towards their children to lull them to sleep. There is something rather poignant about the lullaby here being spoken by the still young elder sister. The persona is clearly still suffering and grieving for her dead parents. However, note that this is couched within the softer, more generic phrase, the sadness. Such sadness is a regular part of the persona's life at this point, hence the use of the present tense comes. Stories, especially childhood stories, can be magical and transcend typical adult and human boundaries. Death can be horribly impersonal. When we die, we lose all of our human characteristics and become just male or female bodies. Note the continued absence of capital letters. This both reflects the youthful immaturity of the sisters and creates a calmer, more naive tone. The parents may be buried more than 7,000 miles apart. However, both the parallelism, the identical phrasing, X buried in place, and the enjambment hint at the parents' continuing binding connection. At the beginning of the poem, we need to figure out that the sadness in the first stanza relates to the man and the woman being buried in the second stanza. This is because even siblings recognize the importance of modifying language in order to try to avoid causing additional distress to the young and vulnerable. The same process occurs here in the third stanza, with the suggestion that the parents have been asleep rather than stone cold dead. Within children's stories and children's imaginations, the magical can occur. Thus, the parents being buried in 2 different continents is no barrier to them awaking at the same time, to be brought together by a benign planet. Within stories, the impossible can occur seamlessly. The idea of opening a tunnel suggests that such a passageway is already present. Simply press a button or act, and hey presto, the distance underground between Pakistan and the USA can be covered in seconds. I'm intrigued by the use of the ampersand rather than the actual word and between dirt sky and worm stars. To me, this shortened version reflects the haste with which the dead parents are desperate to be reunited with each other, at least within this lullaby. There is no time to be lost. To dance is both to move impulsively and in tandem with another person. To dance well with another person requires a great deal of practice and an intimate knowledge of that person's thought processes and body. The fact that the first thing, and indeed the only thing the parents do when reunited within this fantasy is to dance, suggests that their living relationship was vibrant and sensual. The intensity of the pair's dancing is emphasised by the surprising lack of enjambment between lines 9 and 10. We might expect the lovers dance all night, but no, we have the more insistent, the lovers dance all night. There is a time shift between stanzas 5 and 6. From present grief and present fantasies, we move back to actual memories, with the father lovingly caressing the mother's imperfect smile. Note the use of fricative alliteration in father's fingertips, which reflects the intensity of the father's love and desire for the mother. Living, passionate human relationships are about small details. Note the zoomed-in reference to fingertips. We have moved a world away from the bland, generic, a man buried in Pakistan. The cliché states that in love you should love each other, warts and all. One of the figurative warts of the mother is that her smile is crooked, is a little bit wonky. But this makes the father love and want to caress her all the more. Note the use of the spondee in line 14. Her henna-dyed hair lights the underworlds. This spondee slows down the pace and allows time for the mother's bright, shining, beautiful hair to be fully appreciated in spite of her death. What do we make of the father's mole winking the dark? When we wink, we typically do this to create a light-hearted connection with someone, to show that we are both human and joking. However, to wink is also to close an eye, a stark reminder of the fact that ultimately both parents' eyes are closed, never to open again. This starkness is also emphasised by the brevity of this final line, which contains just 3 syllables. Avoid will remain, irrespective of wish fulfillment fantasies and lullabies. Why not have a go now at planning topic sentences and juicy quotations which could be weaved into an outstanding essay? Make some specific points about the way he presents relationships in which love can be painful, and find some quotations which not only back up your points but lend themselves to detailed AO2 analysis. Get started. It's pause time. I might start my first main paragraph with a point such as, loving those who have died can cause extensive grief, which cannot easily be assuaged. I would then continue by using the quotation, when the sadness comes, which I would analyse in delicious detail. Next up, I would point out that when someone you love has died, it is difficult to avoid contemplating the grim realities of their bodies' physical decomposition. And so, of course, my next quotation would be the oxymorons within dirt sky and worm stars. In my final main paragraph, I would make the point that the pain of love and loss can be eased to some extent by fantasies. My quotation would be, the planet opens a tunnel where they meet. Now for my sample grade 9 paragraph. In Lullaby, when someone you love has died, it is difficult to avoid contemplating the grim realities of their bodies' physical decomposition. At the end of the 4th stanza, this is acknowledged by the oxymoronic references to dirt sky and worm stars. On the one hand, the adjectives dirt and worm remind the young bereaved persona of the brutal reality of her parents' decomposing bodies buried in the dirty grounds. However, the simultaneous references to sky and stars are reminders of the beauty and vastness of the universe as a whole. Within such a magical, unknowable world, perhaps some kind of reunion may indeed be possible, something emphasised by the cross-stanza enjambment, which leaves the lovers free to leave behind the dirt and worms to enjoy some sensual dancing. Such an image allows the bereaved children to temporarily forget the pain of losing the parents they clearly loved so dearly.